73% of executives who work with business coaches report measurable performance improvements within 6 months. But here's what matters. The coaches who deliver those results aren't doing what consultants do. They're asking one specific question that changes everything. And most leaders never even realize it's being asked. You've invested in development. You've hired smart people. You've brought in consultants who told you exactly what to do. They handed you frameworks, 3-year plans, restructuring roadmaps, and nothing stuck. 6 months later, the insight is forgotten. The team reverts to old patterns. The consultant moves to the next client. You're left wondering why paying someone to tell you what to do didn't actually change how you lead. According to McKinsey's 2026 research on executive development, only 34% of leaders who received traditional advice-based consulting report sustained behavioral change beyond the initial engagement. The gap isn't about intelligence. It's about what kind of help actually rewires how humans make decisions. That gap is the difference between being told what to do and discovering what you're capable of. This video breaks down the single diagnostic question that separates coaching from consulting. More importantly, it shows you how to recognize which approach you actually need right now, and how to demand it from whoever you're paying. In the next 8 minutes, you'll see the exact cognitive difference between directive advice and discovery-based development. You'll learn why executives in high-stakes environments across Singapore, India, and the Asia Pacific are increasingly shifting toward coaching relationships instead of consulting engagements. And you'll understand how to apply this distinction to your own team's growth strategy. This isn't about rejecting consultants. It's about knowing when each one belongs in the room. The question that changes everything. Tell me what you already know that you're not yet acting on. A consultant walks in and asks, "What's broken? What are your gaps? What should you do differently?" A coach walks in and asks, "What do you already understand about this situation that you haven't fully leveraged?" That second question is the diagnostic divide. Gartner's 2025 analysis of executive coaching (ROI) found that coaching interventions centered on unlocking existing capability outperformed advice-based interventions by a factor of 2.4 in terms of sustained behavior change. The mechanism is neurological. When a leader is told what to do, compliance is voluntary and temporary. When a leader discovers what they're already capable of, the insight becomes integrated into their identity and decision-making architecture. Take Sundar Pichai at Google. When he transitioned into the CEO role in late 2024, his executive coaches didn't tell him how to manage the board or balance innovation cycles. They asked him what he'd learned from leading product for 15 years that applied to the whole company. That excavation process, pulling from existing mastery, created faster integration than external playbooks ever could. Here's how to apply it in your next one-on-one with a direct report or mentor. Try this. Instead of asking what they should do about a challenge, ask them, "What do you already understand about this that you're not yet acting on? What's in the way of moving on what you already know?" You'll often find the blocker isn't knowledge. It's identity, fear, or competing priorities. That's a completely different conversation to have. The competence gap versus the execution gap. Why your team needs different help than you think. A competence gap is real. You don't know how to run a Series B fundraising process. You've never navigated a regulatory shift in India's fintech space. You don't have a framework for international hiring across APJ markets. That's a gap that consulting closes. An execution gap is different. You understand what good strategy looks like. You know what a high-performing team needs. You've read the research. but you're not implementing it because of fear, political capital constraints, or conflicting incentives? That's a gap that coaching closes. Recent research from the World Economic Forum's 2026 Future of Work report found that 68% of leaders identified as high-performing on strategy development but low-performing on execution consistency. The gap wasn't capability. It was the ability to sustain behavior change under pressure. Consider the experience of senior leaders across Southeast Asia managing remote-first teams by 2025. The frameworks for distributed work were well established. The consulting playbook was clear. But leaders who struggled weren't struggling with what to do. They were struggling with believing they could maintain cultural cohesion without physical presence, navigating their own anxiety about visibility and control, and making the daily micro-decisions that reflect that belief. The coaches who helped those leaders didn't teach them what to do. They worked with them on the mindset shifts required to actually do what they already intellectually understood. Here's the application. Before you hire a consultant or coach, do this audit. List the 3 biggest challenges facing your team right now. For each one, ask, do we lack the framework? Or do we lack the consistency in executing what we know? If it's framework, that's consulting. If it's consistency, execution under pressure, or identity alignment, that's coaching. You might need both, but you'll know which one to prioritize and why. The sustainability test. Which one actually stays with your organization? Here's a hard truth. Consulting deliverables are designed to be transferred. They're intellectual property. They live in decks, in documentation, in the consultant's absence. Coaching relationships are designed to be internalized. The value lives in the person. It lives in how they think, decide, and influence. According to Deloitte's 2026 research on talent retention and leadership development, organizations that paired consulting engagements with ongoing coaching relationships saw 42% higher sustainability of strategic initiatives 18 months post-engagement than organizations that relied on consulting alone. The reason? Someone had to stay inside the organization and embody the shift. Consultants hand over the work. Coaches develop the person who keeps the work alive. This distinction matters enormously for APJ markets where leadership tenure, organizational fluidity, and the cost of losing institutional knowledge are particularly high. In Singapore and India especially, where competitive pressure for senior talent is acute. Developing coaches internally or partnering with long-term coaching relationships is becoming a strategic talent retention lever. A consultant leaves. A coach's work stays because it's embedded in the person they developed. Take the experience of a mid-market tech company in Bangalore that shifted from pure consulting engagements to a blended model in 2025. They brought in consultants to design their go-to-market strategy for Southeast Asia. But they also invested in executive coaching for their chief commercial officer. 18 months later, the go-to-market framework was outdated and being rewritten. But the commercial leader's ability to lead through ambiguity, manage their own anxiety in fast-moving markets, and make better strategic decisions under pressure, that stayed. That compounded. It became embedded in how she led others. Here's what you do when you're evaluating whether to hire a consultant or coach. Ask this final question. Who will own this work in 2 years? If the answer is the consultant's deliverable needs to exist in someone's hands, that's consulting. If the answer is you need someone to be smarter, calmer, more decisive under pressure, that's coaching. And if the answer is both, then design for the coaching relationship to create the person who will steward the consulting. Output. That's a sustainable combination. Imagine your organization 18 months from now. Your leaders aren't waiting for consultants to tell them what to do. They've become more rigorous thinkers. They make better decisions under pressure. They don't second-guess themselves when markets shift. They've internalized the frameworks. Not because they read them in a deck, but because they've been coached through applying them. Your senior team doesn't turn over at the first offer of higher comp elsewhere because they feel like they're actually developing. Your strategy doesn't depend on external validation. It depends on your people becoming capable of discovering the right moves themselves. That's not just operational efficiency. That's organizational resilience. That's what separates companies that execute consistently from companies that depend on the next consultant. The single question, tell me what you already know that you're not yet acting on, is the diagnostic tool that separates these two approaches. Use it on yourself first. What do you understand about your own leadership that you're not yet acting on? If you can answer that clearly, you know what kind of help you actually need. If this framework resonated, subscribe to Apex Minds and hit the notification bell. This week we're diving into why your best leaders are quietly building external advisory boards. Thanks for listening. If you found this valuable, please subscribe to Apex Minds D4J for more powerful insights. See you in the next one.